This is Monocle on Fashion, a show on Monocle Radio offering global perspectives and nuanced conversations on the worlds of fashion and style. I'm Natalie Theodosi, your host and Monocle's fashion director. This week, we are starting to get into the festive mood with shopping recommendations and conversations with brands that capture the indulgent, celebratory mood of the season, from jewellery to nightwear. First, we will be speaking to jeweller Lucy Delius, who has opened her first boutique in West London just in time for Christmas shopping.
Jewellery is such a sensual experience. It's not just about how something looks, it's about how something feels.
Then we sit down with Olivia von Halle, the woman behind the most luxurious sleepwear in the world.
And it just became a real weekend ritual, go out, bring half the nightclub back to my flat in Shanghai, party the night away with a gin and tonic in one hand, a cigarette in the other, in my silk pajamas.
We will also be speaking to Monocle's Fernando Augusto Pacheco, a resident media expert on Vanity Fair's divisive new look.
Sometimes I generally go on eBay and I buy old copies from the 90s, from the 80s, because I like this unique kind of point of view.
This and more coming up on Monocle on Fashion. Let's get started with Fernando, who joined me here in the studio to talk about Vanity Fair's Hollywood issue, the first under newly appointed head of editorial content, Mark Guiducci. We had some opposing views, but perhaps that's what good magazine covers are supposed to elicit. Faye, welcome back. You're one of the most regular and most popular guests of the podcast, so I'm so happy to have you back.
It's a pleasure. I think we share a lot of things in common, Monocle Fashion and The Stack. I think it's a good collab in there.
And there's so many news across fashion media this year and so much change that you're the best person to have back to talk this time about. We've been talking a lot about Vogue, about what was happening around the September issues, but now there's changes at Vanity Fair, which kind of goes across the worlds of Hollywood and also fashion. So Mark Guiducci, his first main cover for Vanity Fair, and it's the big Hollywood issue. What did you think?
Well, my first impressions are positive. And, some people might disagree, and that's absolutely fine.
Including myself, but more on that later.
We can definitely talk about it. But you know what? I have a soft spot for the magazine, for Vanity Fair.
Sure.
Sometimes I generally go on eBay and I buy old copies from the 90s, from the 80s, because I like the idea of the magazine where you can have an interview with a celebrity, but also, an insider story about who is going to be the next Democratic candidate for the elections. I like that mix of glamour, some stories about crime. It has kind of this unique kind of point of view. But, we all have to be a bit honest. I think the magazine is not what it used to be, especially in the last, 10 years. You can put the number you would like. So I think a new editor gave me hope that he might be fresh. And I know Mark, from what I read about him, from the interviews, he respects this tradition of Vanity Fair, of being, glitzy and also talking about what we're living, the society we're living, being quite current. So because he respects that past, I have high hopes for what he will achieve. And I did like the cover. I know we're going to talk about why perhaps you didn't like it, because I think it's fun. Even the cover headline, let's hear it for the boys. I think he doesn't mind being a tad bit mildly controversial. It's not such a big controversy, but I think he's bringing that kind of energy, love me or hate it perhaps, as well to the magazine.
I think that's where I will agree. I think when there's debate and some sort of reaction to a magazine cover, whether it's good or bad, as long as it's not neutral, that's positive news. You're right about him kind of coming up with new ideas, new energy to revive a publication that, like you say, it's not what it used to be. And I think his ideas of bringing glitz and glam back, he's invested in new voices, a new exciting fashion reporter, and also I think he's moving away from the royal coverage. So you can see that there's definitely something happening. For me, the cover and that focus on prep getting the same photographer who shot Jonathan Anderson's campaign, so a male photographer, a male stylist. Let's hear it for the boys, a bunch of guys. I mean, the most attractive Hollywood actors.
Good actors.
Who I personally love, so don't get me wrong. But it's just sending a message where women are excluded from the conversation. And that's the message that has been communicated throughout the catwalks as well the last few months, with all the appointments of the creative directors who are all white males in their 40s. And just overall, so maybe that's what bugged me. It's an amalgamation of things that at Condé Nast there's been a real embracing of this return to traditional Republican values in many different ways across Vogue. I mean, look at how they are kind of welcoming Lauren Sanchez with open arms. I look at Vogue Greek, which is very close to home for me. They have a Republican ambassador and a big Trump supporter on the cover. So to me, there's kind of underlayers, and it's not as light, like let's hear it for the boys, nice men on the beach wearing yellow and red trousers, but there's something more to it, and I'm not sure how I feel about it.
Listen, I love your perspective, and you're looking from
exactly, it's a much wider angle.
It's a wider angle, and I do think let's see what he's going to do perhaps with the next 3 to 4 issues, because I kind of agree. I mean, we are in a different world. I mean, let's be honest, we are politically, and I don't think it's just in the United States. So I think this will be reflected in fashion or even in magazines as well, after a period perhaps of a very progressive period that we had. But perhaps it's a bit too early to say. But one thing I can tell you, perhaps as a gay man who grew up looking at Abercrombie & Fitch catalogs, that energy was there, as you said, prep, very preppy, you kind of very Bruce Weber-esque, which I have to be honest, I love the work of Bruce Weber. I interviewed him this year, and, I grew up with that, but then that kind of disappeared because he became so common, it was nothing fantastic. But in a weird way, looking at the photo shoot, very simple, very smiley, very American, sunny, preppy, I don't know, it excited me because it was like, oh, that's something that I used to know when I was a kid or when I was a bit younger. But of course, if it continues just having that same, of course, I'll be bored. But for me, in a weird way, it sounded refreshing.
I think that's a good perspective. And you are right in that it takes more than a single cover. And also, it's definitely a move forward. I think last time we were speaking about a lot of covers that are quite still behind a plain background, and at least here they're moving, they're laughing, they're on a beach, there's something going on. So let's hope that we can keep an open mind, open to change, and see what he does next.
And if I may say, even the previous issue, I think the current one in the newsstands, because the Hollywood issue, I think it will come out
his
slowly.
Big debut, yeah.
It's the big debut. But even the Charlie XCX one, I think he was already there. Probably, I'm sure he helped with a few things. Again, great to have Charlie on the cover. Very different from Let's Hear It for the Boys. But it's people that we're talking about it, For now, I'm very excited. I don't know, maybe if I'm too optimistic here, but I don't know. I kind of like it.
I'll try and adopt some of your optimism and keep an open mind. Thank you so much, Faye.
My pleasure.
Now we're off to Notting Hill to visit Lucy Delius in her new boutique, a literal jewel box filled with antique furniture and striking artworks. Lucy tells us about launching her eponymous label in 2022 and seeing it grow.
I launched the brand officially in 2022. I have kind of worked all throughout my career in jewellery in some way, shape or form. I was in fine jewellery, I was in demi-fine jewellery, I worked for the DTC, which is the diamond trading company, the rough diamond side of De Beers. So it was kind of something I ended up falling into in my career, and then kind of latterly making my way into the PR side of things. I actually always said to myself that I didn't want to have my own brand because it felt like it was just incredibly hard and it really takes over your life and all of those things. And ironically, it's what I've ended up doing. So during COVID, I was actually consulting for a couple of brands. And it was really when I was working for those people that I realized how wide my knowledge of the jewelry industry was. And I kind of fell back in love with being in jewelry. And I was kind of looking around, and what I realized was that the demi-fine market was very saturated. And then in the fine jewelry market, I felt like there was amazing things if you have £20,000 or even £15,000. But if you wanted to kind of look at that entry point to fine jewelry where you were still getting solid gold and not gold plated materials like in demi-fine, I personally was really struggling to find something in that 5 to 10,000 category. So at the same time, I've always collected vintage jewelry, and in particular, I really love Victorian. It was watch chains that I was really into at the time. And I thought, well, why don't I kind of reinvigorate this silhouette and kind of pay tribute to the amazing jewelry making techniques of Victorian times, but put a modern spin on them. So, for example, if you're buying a Victorian men's watch chain to wear as a necklace, it's usually going to be a 9-carat gold, which is usually quite rosy. It can be it's a bit more of a bohemian sort of vibe. So if you want that really polished look, you kind of struggle to find that in Victorian jewelry. The same goes for the diamonds. So, those stones would have been traditionally cut by hand by candlelight, and it's all very romantic, but they're not necessarily the brightest, sparkliest stones. So in what I'm doing, we use 14-carat gold rather than 9-carat gold. The links are maybe a bit slimmer. The chains are a little bit longer because obviously watch chains were traditionally used as that. It was kind of around the waist, the kind of a part of the waist, so they weren't necessarily that long to be worn as necklaces. And we use really high quality diamonds as well. So you're kind of getting that beautiful feeling, that really familiar classic silhouette, but with modern jewelry making techniques.
I love that. I think we were missing that more romantic bohemian vibe in the world of fine jewelry. But it's also interesting that you're quite practical in many ways. You're thinking about making the clasps more functional, giving the customers option to stack their jewelry and work across different price points. Was that element of practicality also quite important when you were thinking about the brand and what you wanted to feel like?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think as women, we want to, if you're spending a certain amount of money, you want something that you can wear all day, every day. And you want something that takes you from breakfast, from your school drop off to a meeting, and then that you can go out for dinner. And it kind of looks amazing in every single setting that you live your life in. Also, in terms of the clasps and things like that, I personally think there's nothing uglier than a lobster clasp or a bolt clasp, which you would get on a necklace or a bracelet. And so I always kind of set out to make them either completely hidden, which is what I do in our necklaces, or I make them a focal point, so put diamonds all over them. Or if I am going to use a clasp, I use the Albert clasp, which is again part of the Victorian watch chain. So it's all about kind of deconstructing those elements and then making them a bit more functional, making them a bit more special. On our Albert clips, for example, I've got diamonds on them. Or if you've got an emerald pendant, you've got a tiny bit of emerald on the clasp, those little things, those details.
It's such a small detail, but I think women all over will resonate and celebrate that, because we all hate those really uncomfortable, ugly clasps. I want to hear more also about the store, because it's quite early on in the life of the business and it's quite a bold move to open your own space. Tell me, why did you feel like it was the right moment and you needed your own physical boutique?
I think jewelry is such a sensual experience. It's not just about how something looks. It's about how something feels. It's also about the moment in which you commit to that piece of jewelry. So whether you're coming, I mean, a lot of my clients are women coming in to buy jewelry for themselves. So whether they're celebrating a promotion, or they've been left some money by a parent, or it's their 30th, 40th, 50th birthday or wedding anniversary, they are coming in to kind of to mark a moment. And so I think it's really important that we offer them an opportunity for a story, for a really nice feeling, to kind of experience the jewelry at so many different levels. So in my store, it's a bit hidden. You've got lots of textiles hanging in the front. So I wanted you to kind of have to search it out slightly. And then once you walk in through the door, I wanted it to feel kind of like you were walking into a jewelry box. So we've got beautiful padded silk moire walls. We've got draped silk hanging on the ceiling. And it's very kind of cozy, dark wood, quite tonal in the feel. There's a lot of gold fabric, which matches the gold jewelry. It's very untraditional in the way that you would expect a jewelry store to feel. And then, you know, the way we've scented it with Maison d'Eau candles. Yeah, it's kind of, we invite you to come and to share in our space, and also to understand our world and understand how the jewelry all fits together and how it fits into your life. And most importantly, it's a space for them to come and feel, how does the ring feel on the inside of your finger? What's the weight of the necklace on your neck? Are the earrings light? Are they heavy? How do they catch the light in low light, in bright light? And it's kind of offering all of those experiences to the client. It's also, you know, we're a young brand, but I have kind of 15, 16, 17 years within the industry, and clients were coming to our office and our showroom, and it just wasn't the sort of experience I wanted them to have of the brand. I wanted them to really understand everything that goes into a piece of jewelry, because I feel so close. It's almost like I kind of say goodbye to every piece as it leaves the office. It sounds a little bit crazy, but it's so personal to me. And also, this is what's amazing, is that, you know, we do lots of trunk shows. We go to the US a lot. And one of the most rewarding things is getting to meet the client and getting to meet the potential customer, and to see how they interact with the piece and what they love. What, you know, because if I'm designing in silos sitting at my desk and only communicating with people via Instagram or via the website, it's a very different experience. And it's great for someone to say, oh, actually, I love this, but maybe this would feel better. This necklace would feel better at a longer length, or I love the shape of this ring, but actually I would love it if it was smaller, or whatever their feedback is. So it's a really nice way for us to interact with the client on the designs as well.
Yeah, no, it definitely does feel very intimate, like almost stepping inside your living room. And you've chosen, I'm biased because I live nearby, but you've chosen Notting Hill, which is one of London's most incredible neighborhoods. Who has been coming in and out so far?
Oh, well, it's actually been really, really lovely, because Ledbury Road has got such a nice, I mean, you'll know this, it's got such a nice little footfall. We've got Hagen Coffee in Ottolenghi up the road. So there's lots of locals who kind of pop in on their way to the gym class, to drop their kids off, walking their dog. Then in the afternoons, we've got people who are kind of strolling over from the Walmer Castle. And yeah, it's got the most lovely sort of local buzz.
That was Lucy Delius. If you're in London, make sure to pay her boutique a visit on Ledbury Road and grab a drink at Walmart Castle, West Londoners' favorite pub just across the street. For our main act, we are speaking to Olivia von Halle, founder of her eponymous label, which is known for some of the most luxurious silk pajamas and cashmere loungewear in the world. You can't help but fall for Olivia and her entrepreneurial story. The idea for the brand came during the party days of her 20s, when she would change out of her Verlege party dresses and host after parties at home in her custom silk pajamas. Since then, she's built a globally recognized brand and she tells us about the power of staying independent and focused on your niche. Let's hear from Olivia von Halle.
I think it came from a very organic place. It was something that I really fell into doing. So the story is that my husband and I met and got married when we were really young. He was 23, I was 25, and we decided to go off to Shanghai and have an adventure together. And I had been a trend forecaster before that, so actually an avid Monocle fan. And we went off to Shanghai. And Shanghai in 2008 was a place that had such an entrepreneurial spirit. Everywhere you went, there were entrepreneurs. Everyone was setting up businesses. People were very collaborative, and there was lots of sharing of ideas. And I think I was actively wanting to start a business, but actually the pajamas was something that just happened in the background, and it grew its own personality really before I realised that this was the idea. So it was 2008, it was sort of the end of the noughties. It was all Hervé Leger dresses and Christian Louboutin heels.
Oh God, I remember that time.
And it was tits and ass. And also we went out in 5-inch stilettos. It was crazy. And I was clubbing a lot. And I would come back from nightclubs and just be desperate to kind of take off these ridiculous outfits that we would go out in and come back and just change into something that was really kind of free and comfortable. And of course it's Shanghai, and so lots of people were wearing silk pajamas, and I'm very tall, so I had my tailor out there make some silk pajamas for me, and it just became a real weekend ritual. Go out, bring half the nightclub back to my flat in Shanghai, party the night away with a gin and tonic in one hand, a cigarette in the other, in my silk pajamas. And so at that time I was also looking to start, I think I was trying to start a dog food brand, which I actually think would have been quite successful. And I broke my ankle and I flew back to the UK, and I spent 3 months sitting on my parents' sofa with my leg really badly broken and all of my friends coming to visit me. And one of the only things I could wear was my silk pajamas. So all of my friends would come over and go, "Oh, you poor thing. Oh my God, what are you wearing?" And I would be like, "Oh, they're these silk pajamas. My tailor makes them. Oh, can you make some for me?" And so I started doing it very much on the side. I'd have no formal training. And at the end of 3 months, I went back to Shanghai with this huge book filled with all of my friends' inside leg measurements, went to my tailor, and he said, "Are you crazy? It takes me 2.5 days to make one pair of these pajamas. If you want to do this, you need a factory." And that was the real eureka moment. I was like, oh God, okay, this is the business. And I started to do some research, and I realised that there was just nothing available at that time on the market that was the sort of thing I wanted to do. There were some beautiful menswear brands doing lovely Savile Row pyjamas, but for women it was a very forgotten category. There were a few big brands slapping their names on things, but they weren't well thought through or really considered. And I guess I just felt that there was this huge opportunity that for all other categories, so for the polo shirt, you have Ralph Lauren. For the swimming trunk at that time, you had Vilebrequin. Now you have All Brown. And I felt that for the pyjama, which is something that we all have, we all wear, there was this huge opportunity that there was no one particular brand that owned that. So I started with the mission to make my name synonymous with the world's best pyjamas. And that's how it all started.
That's incredible. And I love that it wasn't actually about staying in and something quite esoteric. There's a party spirit to the founding story, and it's also about entertaining and having a really fabulous time.
Yeah. And I think that's something which really comes through into the brand and in the way that the brand feels. I think it still has that sort of naughty element. It's one of the best things about owning the brand outright and not having to worry about investors is that, if we want to have girls smoking all over the pajamas, we can. If we want to, we can do naughty things and we can still have a bit of that rebel spirit. And I think that's something which is such a huge part of pajamas history, because pajamas were the first trousers ever worn by women. When Coco Chanel, she borrowed her lover's pajamas and started wearing them on the beach, and it started this huge trend in the 1920s. And so I think there's something really wonderful about that, the spirit of that feminist rebel, which I love.
That sounds incredible. There's so much I want to pick up on. But before, you mentioned your tailor who would early on make you your own silk pajamas.
Yeah.
How important was that craft element and finding afterwards the right factory who could create that kind of custom, beautiful pair of pajamas that is similar to what you had, but at a bigger scale? Because I think quality is a huge selling point of what you do, and it really kind of differentiates your brand versus other ones.
Oh, thank you. I think for me, quality is so important, and probably part of it comes from having imposter syndrome about not being professionally trained. And so right now I'm sitting here wearing a ribbed cream sort of tracksuit set, which we hope to bring out in a year's time, and I'm wear testing it now. And for me, quality is so important, but it comes from a very real place of having to learn it all myself from scratch, just from being a consumer, and to have to really interrogate all of those things. So yeah, it was hugely important. I mean, Shanghai is an amazing place to be able to source silk pajamas from. Ours are all made in a city that's about 4 hours away called Taizhou. But it's, of course, it's the Silk Road. All silk comes from China. They created silk 4,000 years ago. So it's a wonderful place to create. But I think the quality of things is so important, because I guess I just didn't take anything that anyone was saying to me as I questioned everything, perhaps in a way that someone who has got much more training wouldn't do. So, I'm obsessed with turning garments inside out and questioning why seams are done in a certain way. We make all of our labels from silk. I think we're probably one of the only brands that does that, and that's something that we developed ourselves, because to me, if you're lying in bed in a pair of silk pajamas, the last thing you want is a nasty, scratchy polyester label, sticking into your thigh. And so I think really interrogating all of those things, it comes from my customer, it comes from me ultimately being quite selfish and being the end user and wanting to lie in bed and have the most amazing experience and not be sort of thinking, oh God, that's a bit scratchy, or yeah.
Yeah, so you are your own customer, and I'm sure that has paid off a lot. And earlier you also mentioned that you haven't taken on investment, which is and also very unique in the current market. I think I'm Giorgio Armani, and maybe a handful of people have stuck to that. So tell me about, is it challenging to grow without doing that? And also, what are the benefits of being completely independent and calling your own shots?
I think it's been such a journey, and it's something that over the years I've looked back on and questioned, was that the right thing to do? I think that my husband and I run the business together. I started it, and after 5 years he came and joined, and he's got a brilliant intellectual mathematical brain. He studied maths at university. I'm definitely the end consumer who's very passionate about the product. We do things in a really different way to other brands. I think our whole approach is really different. Because neither of us have ever worked at another brand, I think the whole way we set it up has been completely organic. So, the team grows. Suddenly you realise that you don't have anyone doing this particular role, and you go, oh gosh, what should that role be? And you just create the right job title that seems to fit that role. And when new people come into the business, it can take them a while to kind of understand the way that we do things, and they always start off going, this is absolutely crazy, and then after 6 months they go, do you know what, this is crazy, but actually it works really well for you guys, and I really admire what you're doing here. I think there's all sorts of things that we do. We don't have targets for anything. We don't have sales targets. We don't have pricing targets when we're creating products. So the way we go about product development is that we go and try and find the most beautiful quality silk, cashmere finishes, and then we create the best product that we can, and then we price it, and we go, is our woman going to pay $2,500 for a tracksuit like the one I'm currently wearing? I mean, I think she will, and that's why I'm wearing it now and thinking, would I spend that on this? So I think the way we do things is but it's also the things you can do when a brand is small. It is really hard sometimes not having investment, and it can be really frustrating when you've got an amazing team of people and you've got all sorts of fantastic ideas for things you want to do. But I think it's made us be very nimble and very clever with what we do, especially when it comes to marketing. We talk a lot about having big brand energy. I remember once having a conversation with one of the personal shoppers at Harrods, and she said, my customer, and she was dealing with, I think, customers who are buying, sort of over £250,000 a year at Harrods. She said, my women, they don't want to see any other brands apart from the super brands. They're only shopping Prada, Chanel, Louis Vuitton. The only other brand I'll show them apart from those is yours. So in a way, we're in this landscape where we are being compared to these absolutely huge super brands who have got all of the resources. So it's hard trying to match that up with my little team of 25 people in central London.
But I think also part of it is that you're so focused on the sleepwear category.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if you had investors, they would have already pushed you to expand into new categories, to open a shop, to do this, to do that. Why was it important to really focus and own that category versus think of, I'm sure you have other ideas, and then there are natural extensions to the brand, but is that the biggest ambition, to really own sleepwear and pajamas and, like you said, make the best ones in the world?
Yeah, it is. It really is. That is our goal, and it's something that we come back to at the start of every team meeting, that we have sort of business breakfast every 3 months for the whole team, and it's the slide that we open on that our goal is to create the world's best pajamas. And I think it might seem a little sort of restrictive to some people, but we have gone through so many huge global events that, as we are actually quite a global brand, the US is our biggest market, the Middle East is huge for us, Russia was 20% of our business. We have been so buffeted by these events that have hit the world. And actually, for us, being super focused on one thing and doing that one thing really well has meant that we've been able to survive all of the issues that have come our way. The US-China trade war has been a huge issue for us because we make in China and the US is our biggest market. The war in Ukraine was huge. It's very challenging. Brexit, there's been so many.
God, yeah.
I mean, it just goes on and on. It's, 15 years of very tumultuous times. And actually, I think just being very focused on one thing. I think it's also, when you start a business, it's very easy to get bored of that original product. And for us, our biggest selling thing is the pajama that I launched almost 15 years ago. That's still our biggest seller. And anytime, of course, we have so many ideas of other things that we want to do, that I'm sure we will do now that the brand is more established. And we do lots of, we do dressing gowns and little, all sorts of little different kind of like loungewear and nightwear sort of sets. But obviously there's a huge world out there of brand extensions that we can do. But I think, just staying super focused has been part of our success. And I think it's also about understanding what your team's capacity is. And I felt that because we don't have investors, we do have limited resources with the team, and actually being able to be really focused on what we do. And remember that, yes, you might have all the world's A-listers and royal families buying your pajamas, but actually there's a whole world out there that hasn't heard of them yet that we could still access. And I feel like we're still in that stage. When it's not a household name or anything. So I feel that there's still so far we can go with really being focused on what we're currently doing.
And it's products that you can really use, like you can keep for years, but also, like you were saying earlier, it's products you can sleep in, but you can entertain at home.
Yeah.
There's different ways. So tell me about, how do you see the pajamas, the dressing gowns being worn?
I think I love it that people are hosting events at home in them. I think it's such a fun thing to host like a cocktail party or something in at home. That was the reason that I first got into pajamas, was it felt like a wonderful, that rebellious spirit I was talking about before. There's something very louche about wearing your pajamas. You feel like you're sort of breaking the rules somehow. And so I think there's just something very chic about kind of hosting like a cocktail party. I've got a drinks party I'm planning at the minute for Christmas, and I'm going to wear a beautiful black pajama, there's got like a sort of Swarovski scalloped fringe around the wrists and ankles. And, it's very covered up and it's got that sort of lovely relaxed at home vibe, but it's also really elevated and sparkly.
It sounds incredible. And I love that it all kind of started with Coco Chanel, and there's this feminist edge to it all.
Yeah, so for Christmas, we've got a really beautiful collection. I was talking about one of the black velvet pyjamas with the scalloped crystal tassels on it. And that collection it's really fun and full of movement. So we were thinking about the woman who's hosting like perhaps a fabulous New Year's Eve party at home. And we've got like a really fun little fringe dress, which feels really new for us and not really something we've done before. But I actually wore it to the Hotel Cross party and loved it. And then we've done some really beautiful pyjama. They're really more suits, I would say, but very soft tailoring. And they're covered in crystals as well. So yeah, really leaning into the crystals this season.
Sounds so much fun. And more generally, I think for people that might be new to the category, do you think we need to start thinking a little bit differently about where we invest? Usually we're investing in a designer bag, in shoes, and we tend to overlook mostly the clothes that we wear that touch our skin, and definitely I think sleepwear. So what would you say to people that might be new or rethinking where they put their money, and why is it important to pay more attention to sleepwear and our pajamas, and maybe also even see it as something that you wear outside of bedtime?
Yeah. So I think whenever we design anything, we always think like, could I wear this out? Because in the office we all do, and it's always been a really important part of the brand. I think something we talk about a lot at work is that when you put on Olivia von Halle pajamas, there is something very transformative about the experience. They feel so amazing on your skin. And there is this feeling of, even though you're at home in your flat, that you are, I mean, it's a dreadful expression, but living your best life. There's just that feeling that sort of, if your ghastly ex-boyfriend rang the doorbell, you would come down and you'd just be looking like a movie star. And I feel like there's something in that you're investing in yourself. And I think in this era of wellness and everything, that's something that's been spoken about a lot. And yeah, they're just very transformative. And it is also, I think a huge part of our success has been that it is an amazing gift. It's something that you can give to your mother, your daughter, your grandmother. You can go to stay at someone's house for the weekend. It's the best present. And that's why it's the thing that people come back to year after year. It is just the perfect present.
A huge thank you to Olivia von Halle for joining me here at Midori House. And that's it for today's show. Stay tuned for more designer interviews and style conversations from next week. Today's episode was edited and produced by Lily Austin and Steph Chungu. I'm Natalie Theodosi. Thank you so much for listening.